Jackie's here, changing life loving you. Yeah, that's the groove, life loving you. Feel the truth, move, life loving you. It's all we do, come on through, it's just for you.
I'm going to start by saying I am a reformed yeller, Y-E-L-L-E-R, yeller. My mom was a yeller, so I became a yeller. But don't forget, I am reformed. I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but yeah, I'm used to hearing the way my mom talked, But I realized that was really not good for a relationship because my husband never heard his parents ever argue. So in my house, it was only 2 of them. But in my house, there were 5 of us. He had 2, his parents had 2 children, he and his brother. My family, there were 4 others with me, made 5. So it's like, when somebody's trying to take a breath in, you learn to talk and to talk loud and to get your point across. So volume is a part of my DNA. And so I had to learn how to take it down a couple of notches because my husband's communication mode was very different. He liked to talk in very soft tones. You talk, you think, then you respond. So we really had to work on our communication styles. And I have to admit, who wants a yeller? My mom used to yell and I didn't like it as a child. But guess what? We always recreate what we know. We do what we know. So, reformed yeller, that's me. So now I've learned how to communicate with my husband, which is really, talking. I'm also married to someone that is also a reformed, stubborn person. So my husband, he's very laid back. People look at him, they say like, oh, she must be the hard one. He's very laid back, but he's also very stubborn. You can't make that man do anything he doesn't want to do. So I had to learn how to, smoothly get him to acquiesce, if you will. So I had to learn the art of persuasion and good direct communication. And it's been really helpful because he's willing to talk about things. The thing is he's not always willing to come into agreement with doing exactly what I want. So we've had to learn how to adjust to each other's style and then also how to negotiate and compromise. The art of persuasion to me is about this. If I speak in you phrases, or for me, I'd say I feel, instead of you do this or you do that, and make it about understanding a concept. So I tend to deal with things from a conceptual perspective. What is it that I'm after? What is the concept that I'm trying to establish? So say, for example, it could have been parenting. And in my mind, the concept of the type of parenting that I wanted to see us fulfill could have been a little different than my husband's. So what I would do in communicating the difference is I would make my case. And I would explain why I'm wanting to see things this way from a now perspective, but also looking into the distance. What is it going to look like, this perspective that I'm espousing? And so we kind of talk about it, look at the pros and the cons, and then make a decision from there. But that's pretty much been how we negotiate, or how I like to negotiate. I communicate my happiness or sadness straight up with just, I'm happy or I'm sad. I like this or I don't like that. How can we work on this? And one of the things that I learned is that people have varying degrees of truth tolerance. Now, listen. So I love truth. And I feel like if you love me, you tell me the truth. If you lie to me, I feel that that means that you really don't love me and you're betraying me in some sense. But then I've seen that other people that don't have a very strong tolerance for truth, they believe that kindness is the substitute, and that if you love someone, you don't tell them the truth. You make it lighter. Like instead of saying, oh, look, there's a rat, you call it a gerbil, because a gerbil's a pet. It's so friendly. A rat is vermin, And so they believe differently. So now, how do you take 2 people that are diametrically opposed in terms of how they view it? So my communication style is pretty direct. I like to be told the truth. But then I found that my husband's very kind. If I said, did these pants make my butt look big? Well, nowadays that's a good thing, but back in the day, that was a bad thing. If it did, he's probably going to tell me, no, babes, you look good. But in the back of his mind, he's thinking, she needs to buy different pants. Those aren't really working for her good. But he would never tell me because he's always interested in how I feel. Me, on the other hand, I would take that like he betrayed me because he lied to me instead of telling me the truth. So that's a dance. And so what I've learned is that I've learned to become less direct, and he's learned to become more direct. So we've kind of met somewhere in the middle. But it's a really interesting dynamic. Truth tolerance. How two people are different really does come to play in how they communicate. We really are our history, right? So I realized that my communication style was definitely something that I inherited, from my parents. My dad was very quiet. He wasn't a man of many words. He just talked to you and reasoned with you, and that's kind of how he would just tell you a couple things about what he wanted, what he didn't want. He would get you to agree that you understood, and that was pretty much it. Whereas my mom, she kind of overtalked, and she got annoyed, and she showed in her communication style when she was annoyed. Very different. And I think that it's different with my husband and I as well, and with so many different couples. But I think that we don't really figure out sometimes how those differences can really enhance the relationship. You don't want someone that's just like you in every regard. You want someone that's similar and compatible. But it's like I said, my husband helps me to be less direct. I help him to be more direct. And so in that balancing game, we find true harmony. I talk a lot, Listen, women and men are different. Women love to talk, the majority of us. We talk more than men. It's scientific. They say that men have so many words that they speak a day. By the time they get home, they've used them all. Women, we still have a lot in reserve. So it's like we just kick in the second gear and we can keep going. So yeah, I talk. I like to talk. I like to talk about things that are purposeful. But I'm also a good listener. And like a lot of females are, I can remember what you said, where you were standing when you said it. So I think I'm a good talker, but also a good listener, because it's intriguing to me to figure out what people think and how they feel about different things. I'm very, very given over to that. I love it. I like to understand people at their very core. Even when people hide themselves, I just like seeing the different layers. So listening is very important. One of the things I realize, though, is sometimes people don't listen very well because of their filters. I'm going to say it this way. Sometimes we don't listen well because of our pain. Our pain colors what we hear. So you could have several people hearing the same thing, and they each hear it differently. And that's because of their history. I don't think I really communicate very much non-verbally unless it's romantic communication. Like, boy, come here. I want you. You looking good. You have a way of doing like that kind of a look or whatever. Sometimes I think the best nonverbal communication is a touch. People don't touch enough. My husband and I always touch. When we're together, we're sitting near each other. There's always some part of our body touching one another. I'm always like leaning on him, or my foot is crossed into his foot. We intertwined ourselves. And I think I'm very intentional about that, because there's something about touch that makes you feel connected and that also communicates. I know that there's something that I was reading in science that was talking about some research, and they were saying that irregardless of what country someone comes from, that they found that when they touch each other with the same intention, the receiver understands what that touch meant. I just thought that was fascinating. So I like to touch. That's my best nonverbal communication. It's really so true that words can heal or kill. And the thing about it is, I think that sometimes we're cognizant, but we're not really aware to what extent that that's true. Because I hear people say all the time, you say something, it's out of your mouth, you can't get it back. But there's this proverb that really helped me to become reformed in a lot of my communication styles. There's a proverb that says, a wise woman builds her house, but a foolish one tears it down in a day. That part to me was stunning. So she builds her house. She takes all of this time to put the timber in place, to make the foundation. But then she does something in one day that destroys it all. And I thought to myself, I was like, if ever this was about how you communicate and how you build up someone versus tear them down, I just felt like that was definitely embodied in that particular proverb. So I think words are really important, and we have to understand who it is that we're in love with and what it is that they need. The thing is that we often come to relationships, or I did this, where I wanted to love and to give what I needed. But really, that's the reason why you need a really committed partner, because they work on giving you what you need, and you work on giving them what they need. That way, all expectations are met and all parties are happy. There's so many times that I can think about the words. I mean, I'm thoughtful usually every time. I mean, listen, I'm not perfect. So there's sometimes, you get mad and you get that flash of anger and you might say something without really thinking it through. But for the most part, I'm intentional about my words. So I think about what it is that I want to discuss. And when I was younger, sometimes I didn't have the patience to wait. There's something to waiting to have a conversation. You need to be able to frame your words. But let me tell you, here's what I found about me. What's really important is that I'm able to express who I am. I'm able to show up in a situation, in a conversation, being present, being honest, and being open and available. But then at the same time, I'm able to show up for that other person so that I can really hear what it is that they're saying, understand their perspective, and then you never leave the conversation in the same place. Your location changes because there's been some sort of exchange that's happened during that conversation. And I want to get more artful with that. I want to get better at that. Because what I notice is the only time that I slip is when there's some outside interference. There's things that are somehow muddying the water or making that process more complicated. If I were talking to newlyweds, I think, and I wanted to talk to them about communication, the first thing I would talk to them about would be discovering their history. I would want to excavate there because you come to the relationship basically as a product of your past. So I feel like knowing all of those things are going to be essential. Knowing how were they talked to? How did they see their parents talk and interact? What happened in their latest relationship or the most painful one that they've been through? I think that that's really, really important. The one that means the most is the one that hurt you the most, right? So figuring out what were the dynamics in that relationship? How were you communicating? How were you showing up in that relationship to resolve conflicts and situations? And understanding that to kind of help them to figure out, okay, well, this is what you need to do to make it work for him. And this is what you need to do to make it work for her so that they understand what it's going to take. I think having a target is really important, and having understanding is just paramount. You have to understand who this person is, why they're that way, and what they need, how they need to hear you in a conversation. You need to know what their triggers are. You need to know what your own triggers are so you don't pull the trigger and shoot somebody. If you ask my husband, what does he think about the way I communicate? I think that he would say one thing. I think he would say, she is very direct and she pushes. I remember before we got married, I asked him, I said, are you sure that you want a woman like me? Because I knew that I was not your average girl. I know that I'm not average. I'm idealistic in some ways. I feel like I'm definitely meant to change the world. That's who I think I am. So can you be married to this chick, right? That was my question. But I'm a pusher because I believe that my modus operandi in all of my relationships is to get people to transcend who they are and where they are to be someone different. So I'm always pushing. You tell me this is your truth, I want to push you into your next. If you tell me this is who I am, I want to see where I can see you be in the future, and I want to push you into that place. And so I think that I am always someone that is direct, someone that is very invested in the future of the people that I'm around, whether it's my loved one, whether it's a staff, whether it's a friend. I'm always, and I'm a visionary, so I see you in your future. And I work to make sure that I contribute to you getting there. I think that being direct is It's good and it's bad. So with every behavior, I feel like there's pros and cons, and you just need to know what they are. So there's some people that I've learned to gauge their truth meter. And so sometimes I even say, do you want to know the truth? If someone asks me a question, I preference the question with, do you really want to know the truth? Then I tell you the truth. If you don't, then I'll give you what I call that surface answer that is probably more aligned with what you want to hear. But I think that for my makeup, I think we have to recognize that people are who they are for what they're put on the planet to do. So I am the way that I am because it fulfills my purpose. So it's one of the accoutrements. It's like the jewelry, the earrings, the hair, the makeup that goes with who I am because it makes me fit into my purpose. So I know that my purpose is to be someone that makes people better, but also someone that I believe that's meant to leave their imprint on the world. That's just who I think that I am. So my directness is one of my tools. It's like my bracelet. It adorns me and it helps me to do my job. And to me, purpose is what's really important. And there needs to be purpose in communication. So a lot of people just talk about all kind of crap. What's the purpose? I want to talk so that we can have a meeting of the minds. I want to talk so that we can better understand. And you would think that this is something that you do once in life when you're married, but it's not, because every day I leave my house, I go out into the world and I come back home, I'm different than the girl that left. My husband's different than the man that left that day. And so here we go with this evolution. We're ever changing. I am definitely not the girl I was this time last year. So much about me is different, and so much about my husband is different. He's gone through so many challenges. He's had to expand his business like overnight. So I've seen him go through all of the upheaval. I was at peace. I was doing my thing leisurely. He was really going through. So he's been evolving all the more. So this meeting of the minds is communication. It's not a one-time thing. It's perpetual. And to me, loving that process and being married, see, I'm using that as a pun, being married to the process of communicating is about discovery, and it's about purpose, and it's about establishing a platform that you guys can build on. I think that with all of the prior generations, even though there was an age gap, they were able to still be somewhat congruent. But I feel like this new generation and the older generations, we don't find that. And it's because technology has been the dividing line. Because the way that younger people communicate today is very distinct. It's very different than the way my generation communicates. So guess what? It's created a breach between my generation and younger generations. And I think that that's not a good thing. And I'm hoping that as technology continues to turn the corner, that we're going to see that breach is going to be healed. But this is what I want to say about technology. This is my real philosophy. Everything has a plus and a negative. If you think that there's something that's all good and no negative, you've been deceived. Everything. So that's why we can't think that we're better than anybody else, or the way that we do something is better than the way somebody else do it, or the way someone else does it. And that's simply because there's a positive and a negative. And what I think is happening with technology today is it's great that it's made the world flat, that we're all united. We can communicate in an instant to someone halfway around the world. That's wonderful. But then what it has done is, just like if I put my leg in a cast and I'm no longer having to use those muscles, I atrophy. So I feel that our ability to communicate and to be artful in communication, to be artful with connecting with others, and to do this dance that we need to do to figure each other out, it's been atrophied because technology makes it so simple. I can text you. You don't even have to answer me back until you feel like it. You don't have to call and hear anyone's voice. You can just text, wait until they feel like answering. Now we take that into the dating space, right? And now you have people that say, oh, we talk every day. They mean they text. Good morning. Hope you have a wonderful day. Where do you develop the depth? Like, I'm thinking about my dating experience. I know my husband because we talked, and we talked at length about so many different things. And we spent the actual time. I'm not talking about FaceTime. I'm talking about skin time. We're actually together in the same place, and I'm watching him, deal with, organic things happening around him. You get to really know a person in all aspects and in all dimensions. And I'm really recognizing that a lot of times now, these skill sets are not being developed because of technology. And I think that we have to be a little bit more purposeful about it. And I like to talk in proverbs. There's this proverb, it says, do not remove the ancient boundaries. Well, what that really means is really like this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Communication was good when we met and we actually conversed. Moving it, I think we've moved the boundary line now to using technology, which is a little lazy. And it's just not as effective with getting people to really get on the same page and to know one another. Remember, we're still evolving every day, we're changing. And so this distance that technology allows is not always for our good. Hey, Dr. Jacquie here. I'm your how-to lady. How to do life, how to do love, and how to do you, boo. So click, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more to come.